everybody. It's 7:15, and I'm now bringing to order the February 15th, 2024 meeting of the Sherborn Conservation Commission. And we will start open by just doing I'll call out each individual. You could say your full name and present for the Zoom recording. Michael Lesser, present. Jacob?
Jacob Strauss, present.
Courtney?
Courtney Act, present.
Terry?
Terry Luskin, present.
Kurt?
Kurt Siegel, present.
Steve? Oops, he's
Present, Steve Screwshop.
Matt?
Matt Olair, present.
Okay. Got let's see. Yeah, we're the whole gang. Okay. Are there any issues under the 48-hour rule that might be needed to be added to the agenda?
No.
Okay, great. Okay, got a few minutes before the first hearing. We'll go through whether there are any, let's see. I don't see a warrant. Oh yeah, there's a warrant here. Okay, there's a warrant for whatever it is. Looks like about $13 of postage for Deborah, and then some office supplies of $23. So anybody have any questions about that? Hearing none, moving on to the announcements. I guess I don't know if anybody has announcements other than the fact that there's still that people. I don't know if anybody's decided about the MACC annual conference. I guess there's a reasonable chance I'm going to go. But anybody else decided about it one way or another?
I won't go. I'm waiting for my last 8th class.
Okay, an interesting condition. Leave that. Let's see. Anybody else have any other announcements? Okay, moving on. We have one administrative approval here. I see 91 Western Ave updated for septic design. Is that approved?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other AAs?
No.
Okay, thank you. Warrant there. I couldn't find the draft minutes, but I guess I didn't get to review any. Are they in a particular folder, or I guess we'll just talk about that separately. Okay. Let's see. Do you have any little site issues?
There's a few ongoing things. There's a couple of site visits I'm going to do tomorrow related to neighbor concerns about activities on abutting properties on 2 separate sites. So I will go out and take a look at those, and if there's anything to report, I will report back.
Okay, good. So no questions for us as a group on anything at the
Not at
moment.
this moment in time, no.
Okay, good. We dealt with everything, all the other stuff except for one discussion item here on affordable housing because of the way the ZBA has handled our stuff. We have to draft some proposed conditions for Farm Road homes. And we're going to do that at 8:30. I let the developer know we were going to talk about it. And we settled on an 8:30 time for that. So I've put a beginning draft just in the last hour in the folder there of some things we could walk through and see if we could work out something. Let's see, 7:20. Okay, hold on. Let's see what I got here. Okie dokie. 7:20, notice hereby given that the Sherborn Conservation Commission of will hold a virtual public hearing using Zoom technology at 7:20 on the 15th day of February 2024. The request for determination of applicability hearing will be held pursuant to Chapter 131, Section 40 of the General Laws, as amended, the Wetlands Protection Act, and the Sherborn Wetlands Bylaw, to consider a proposal by the applicant Rui Kai, sorry about the pronunciation, for work within a wetland buffer zone at 1 Pleasant Street, map 13, lot 160. This application is available for viewing at the Sherborn Conservation Commission. All persons desiring to be heard will be given the opportunity to speak at this hearing. Okay, who's here on that one, or how's this gonna work?
I don't see anybody here for that. They did reach out, the engineer reached out to see if what time the meeting was, but if I could share my screen.
Of course.
Are you able to see my the map here?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right, so this is a site where previously testing had been done down closer towards the edge of the wetlands, and because they have to keep their septic system as far away as they can, they're going to retest in the outer buffer zone in this area here. Existing house, Pleasant Street, this is Maple. There's a pond over in this area here at the intersection of Maple and Pleasant. And again, they're going to perform testing here in the outer buffer. There'll be no trees removed. It's an existing lawn area, and the area will be restored similar to what it is now, and no stockpiling in the 100-foot buffer zone. Standard conditions for soil testing under an RDA. And that's the story.
Any erosion control needed?
I don't think so. This is, it's fairly flat and it's a fairly short length of time. But by the time they're done, they will, I've lost my mind. They'll finish with it and won't have to seed it, and it won't go anywhere. I don't suspect it will go anywhere.
Okay, I could accept that. Anybody from the commission have any questions? Anybody from the public want to talk about this or have any questions? Okay,
Can someone stop me from sharing? Because I'm frozen here.
you're frozen. Let's, okay,
Thank you.
played somebody. Okay, so nobody has any other comments, questions? Then I will.
Do you have one comment? This looks like it's a good reason to consider some of the regulation changes to make this kind of temporary testing an AA activity.
Yeah, well, that's part of our discussion later, whether that's possible. So we'll have some fun with that. Okay, I move that we allow the activity to go ahead as a -3 with the conditions noted.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Michael, I, Courtney,
Aye.
Terry,
Aye.
Jacob,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Kurt,
Aye.
Matt.
Aye.
Okay. Got that one done. We got 6 minutes here. Although actually, Kelly, have we, since this is just a discussion item, is everybody here who's going to be here? I certainly see Ted, the most important person. Do we need to wait for anybody else, or we could actually start early?
I think we can start early. Sam really wanted to be here. He's got a capital budget command performance this evening, which may prevent it. There may be 1 or 2 people tuning in at 7:30, but I think it would be perfectly legitimate to get started.
Okay. Then you guys have the floor.
Courtney, do you want to introduce this?
Sure. I don't even remember when we initiated this contract. was a while back, but the
Quickly intervene that depending on what you mean by initiate, it was about 4 or 5 years ago that the subject started coming up.
right. So the commission hired Ted Elliman, who is a plant ecologist of renown, former resident of town, to survey and come up with some management recommendations for several of our parcels in town. And Ted has been surveying these parcels over multiple seasons to really get a very complete idea of what's going on. So tonight we're just going to talk about his initial findings and recommendations. We're not going to get too deep in the weeds, but just kind of give an overview so people can start thinking about things. Because the commission really needs to start doing some work on our properties, some maintenance work. So Kelly, if you want to add anything, otherwise we'll just let Ted take it away.
I guess the only addition would be that the significant decision, which will come later in this discussion, is how to proceed from here. There's no, everybody has received the report. It's pretty imposing and has a hell of a lot in it. No way it can be discussed tonight, and it could be approached in different ways, but we should get on with that later. And yeah, I would just want to turn it right over to Ted to introduce it.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Good to see you all tonight. Yeah, just basically, I think the last time I appeared here, I think we talked about what the aims of the survey would be, but I hadn't started them at that point. So essentially from May into October, I spent quite a bit of time surveying five properties in Sherborn, 5 natural areas. If you read the report, you know what they are, but I'll go over them. The Bailey and Leland, Peters Hill, Hidden Meadow, and the Barber Reservation. So I was focusing my attention on those properties. And basically what I was looking at, the number one thing I was looking at was the presence of invasive plant species on each of those properties and where they were causing problems, particularly with respect to habitats that were sort of good habitats, that were basically sort of intact habitats where invasives were beginning to encroach and cause problems. I was also looking at any instances where invasive plants are causing problems for rare species. There are some rare plant species on some of these properties, so I was looking at that too. And also sort of a combination of ecology and aesthetics, where invasive plants were causing problems in meadow communities. So with the properties that have meadows like Barber, like Hidden Meadow, like Leland, looking very much at those meadows and seeing what the problems were, because there are a number of invasive plant species on those meadows that are a real problem along the borders and in the interiors, both for aesthetic reasons and in terms of the ecology, and proposing some actions for those issues as well. And in addition to the invasive work, I was looking at problems with trails, particularly where vegetation is overgrown some trails, which is a problem on several of the properties. And, just along with that, where there were some specific problems with the trails themselves, where there was rutting or erosion, or where there were problems just with the trails, in some cases actually being abandoned, and making some suggestions with how to improve the trails for visitor experience, and just in terms of getting rid of invasives there too. So that's sort of a general overview of what my particular goals were in these surveys, and the recommendations I made, and I think it was more than I expected. Um, uh, as I say in my report, 4 of those 5 properties have an awful lot of invasive plants throughout. The only exception to that is the Bailey property, which is so exceptional. I mean, it's so different from the others that I was just kind of curious about the land use history there and why there are no invasives there, except in some very limited areas, because that sort of really distinguishes it from the other 4 properties where invasives of particularly there are about, I'd say, half a dozen species that are particularly prevalent, the same half dozen in all of the properties. I was looking at those infestations. So we're talking about species, I think, that are very familiar, like bittersweet, Asian bittersweet, glossy buckthorn is probably the most ubiquitous one, multiflora rose, Japanese barberry, garlic mustard, and so on and so forth. So with all these properties where difficulties were being encountered with these species and some others, Japanese stiltgrass is another one. I was proposing different measures to kind of address these problems. And, for the control or the management recommendations, what I was particularly recommending, or what I was kind of acknowledging, was that there are so many invasive species on most of these properties that kind of doing a wholesale control regimen would virtually impossible. So I was looking very specifically on what projects could be done that would improve habitat quality in these properties, but were also practical, which could be doable by volunteers or by DPW and or by contractors, just specifically focusing on some of these issues, and could be done, not something that would take forever, but within a few years' time, certainly get a handle on or get some control over where some of these problems are. So it's, the invasives are a widespread problem on all the properties. But on the other hand, I think there are certainly projects on each of the properties that are doable and are manageable and would sort of improve the quality of the habitats on those 5 properties. So, I mean, that's sort of in a nutshell what I did. I sort of had my surveys go on all through the season. So looking at, invasives coming up at different times of the growing season, and also looking at the dynamics of the habitats from spring to fall. So just trying to get a good handle on everything here. So anyway, I would be happy to take any questions at this point. And if you've read the report, I'm sure you have questions about the report. I did have a number of recommendations in there. I was trying to prioritize some of the others, but there's a lot there. There's kind of a number of years of work. So of management work that those recommendations would entail. I'll just say I wasn't prioritizing any one property over the others. I mean, they all do have problems. So I would suggest that all the properties be addressed at some point. So.
Guess I have to make I don't know whether it's an embarrassing comment or what, but I can't find anywhere where I got the report. Oh,
It's in the folder.
Oh, it
did-
was just in the folder and not, oh God, I didn't do the obvious. Never mind. I was silly. I thought it would have been emailed from before. I guess okay. Well, I guess I didn't read everything this week. Oh, it came in, it was put up there yesterday. Okay. So, okay, that's why I didn't notice there. Do we want to, since we have time and everybody's here, do we want to?
It might be helpful to
summary?
go to the summary.
Yeah. I could share that screen or you guys can bring it up.
Yeah, that'd be great.
And let's see here. Okay. Visible to everybody here. Should I make it bigger, I assume?
Yeah.
That enough or you want more? Anybody chime in or this is enough? I
Works
can
for
I
me.
see Ted staring. I see
Um,
Ted's up close, so I'll make it bigger.
Oh, yeah, that's better. Yep, thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
All same thing.
Michael, can I make a comment about a choice for the commission?
Sure.
The report looks at the section for each of the 6 areas. And there are going to be a lot of decisions the commission will have to make, some of them fine tuning, some of them much bigger. And it could be plausible to take them up in order of reservation and deal with Leland, deal with Bailey in total before another meeting, moving on to some others. Or like this summary, this doesn't try to distinguish between recommendations for one reservation or the other. It just categorizes all of them into certain kinds of work by certain parties. And we could deal with it going down the categories. I don't know what the commission would want to do. I don't know how many people might have read this and thought about it.
Well, so one thing about the way Kelly has this organized is that routine maintenance by DPW, those are activities that are probably something of a no-brainer on our part, in that it's not really going to entail a cost to the commission. So that could be something that as we go through the different reservations, if we choose to do it that way, that's the kind of thing we could give Kelly like a green light to go ahead and discuss those management recommendations with DPW and see what Sean is able to do or not. Then there are things that are proposals that would require us to spend some money because it's either detail work or just things that Sean wouldn't have time for. So those are probably the things that we might spend more time discussing, I would imagine, when deciding where to spend our money.
Yeah, I'm just scrolling down here. Right, obviously we can, right, I like that idea that we could at least look at all the DPW ones. And, and see whether we have any issues with any of them, so that somebody go forward on the, guess other activities. Is this for the route alterations? Is that something we could do this season versus wait till it's nice, until it's warmer out, or we can schedule some hiking? Is that what would be the recommendation there?
I think that particular group, the route alterations, will be the most fun to deal with, because yes, it does involve some site visits. There aren't too many of them. And the recommendations reveal some problems with the historic locations. And I think that can be dealt with through the winter and implemented next year. The actual work of laying out a new route, I mean, there's I wouldn't call it an army, but there are plenty of people who just love to go out in the woods and carve a trail.
So it sounds like Michael is suggesting that the commission can tackle the low-hanging fruit of easy tasks and fun tasks. We could build those first.
So how would you do we do the route stuff, since we have all 7 of us here? Is it like is it all spread out, or we could do one each time, or how would you, or you would be grouped? We could, like, in 2 or 3 hours, what kind of time frame if we wanted to try to actually see if we could schedule something in the next few weeks?
The biggest change recommended, the biggest root issue is at Hidden Meadow.
Right, I remember, yeah.
Several commission members have been there before. There is actually some disagreement about what to do with it. Ted has a new solution. And if there's not too much snow on the ground, we could do that anytime.
Okay, and that would be the one to just do as one project, one hike that day and be done with that. I mean, not be done, but just only address that one. Do we want to, before we move on to other things, is there something that for the whole commission? Whether, see if I can get everybody on my screen so I can see what's going on here. We haven't done too many site visits lately for where we got most of the people. Is there something that would work for people on a weekend day sometime in the next few weekends? Talking to the commissioners.
Could do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would if I'm available. Absolutely.
Right, if we picked a day, that would be tremendously helpful.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying, is whether we could actually pick a day, pick a weekend in the next, and I assume, I don't know what Ted's, I guess the more important thing is, what's your availability, Ted?
Well, unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't know which, I'm having hip replacement surgery next Tuesday.
Oh, so we have to wheel you around?
Yeah, and wheel me around out there, I guess.
You're piggyback rider.
I mean, I hope, what I hear, from other people who've had it, that you're back on your feet reasonable amount of time, but
I think we
and I
should
hope I am. So anyway,
What's reasonable?
I think we should just wait and figure it out offline until we hear from Ted.
I guess we'll all be sitting there waiting to hear the outcome of your surgery on Tuesday.
I mean, it also, we could also just do a site visit. It's not
right.
like Kelly knows where he's going.
Yeah,
Right, maybe some of the less
is
complicated one.
is the thing we're talking about is sort of reestablishing the route along the old trail that's been abandoned. Is that
Mhm.
was that what you had in mind, Kelly, or
Not just reestablishing it most of the way to that old dilapidated bridge, but your suggestion was then looping it back.
Was looping it back, yeah,
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 I don't remember.
New
right,
trail and a new
right.
loop, which is very intriguing.
Yeah, the reason, I, I mean, if you read the report, I don't know if I'm just rehashing things, but that old trail, and I don't know when it was last active, but it goes through certainly the best habitat in Hidden Meadow. And the one that's sort of the most pristine. It's got the nicest forest, and it's a really nice trail. And in my opinion, it's much better than the other trails there that go through the woods because they pass through a lot of heavily invaded areas with a great number of invasive species. So my idea was to sort of reestablish this trail as an active thing that people can walk on. But instead of going over the bridge, and that bridge is, of course, very rotten. It's dangerous would be dangerous to cross. Uh, but the reason for not sort of reestablishing a bridge and going on the other side, or my feeling about that is that once you cross that bridge, the woods becomes extremely invaded. There are just invasive plants everywhere. And that if people were passing over that stream, going over the bridge and just tramping into invasives and coming back, that you would be bringing a lot of invasive seed or, propagules or whatever, and probably creating, or at least there would be a very good chance that the invasives would then get into and become part of the more pristine part of the woods. So my thought was just to kind of go up to that stream, maybe not that far, not as far as that bridge, but then create a new loop that goes back to the main trail. So that was the thought there.
Well, maybe we should wait on that one, whether there's some other sites we can schedule. Does it make sense that some of the other ones, I'm sorry, I didn't get to read it since it was put in there. I was busy in the last few days, but
There
are
weren't a lot of route changes.
okay.
I
So-
mean, what might make sense at our next meeting is to just go over all of the DPW things and see if we wanted to greenlight them or if we needed to go visit any of them.
Okay, so signage for plant surveys, I'm just looking here. I can't, I dare to bring up whether reestablishing the trail at Hidden Meadow, whether that's even without going into the invasive area, whether that's gonna still end up with people tracking in stuff, but,
Michael, can I ask a permit question about this bridge, mostly
Yeah.
to Joyce? I don't think this stream is active, it's perennial, isn't it, Ted? And this
Say that again, Kelly. I missed your, sorry.
stream that this bridge crosses,
Yeah,
dilapidated bridge.
right.
This bridge is ancient, it's partly falling down, but it's not completely falling down, and it's quite dangerous.
Right.
To remove the bridge would mean heavy equipment or dragging stuff. The bridge really ought to be simply collapsed so it's flat on the ground and let it rot. Would collapsing the bridge require a permit?
you're muted.
I am.
No, I saw Joyce's mouth moving.
Okay.
So are you saying that, what's underneath the bridge?
It's basically the stream.
Intermittent stream?
Yeah,
And so you just want to collapse it into the bed of the intermittent stream and let it rot?
Yes, that's the easiest cure. The way it is, because a lot of it is off the ground with nails and stuff, it really is potentially dangerous. But it would be terribly difficult and probably spread the invasives to try to remove it.
Well, because I'm shocked at what you're saying, I think it's probably not as bad as I think it is. So could look at it.
Yes, we need a site visit to the site.
Can I just ask, is it stone and wood? I'm hearing nails, which makes me think it's not just a
all-
stone
It's all,
bridge.
it's all wood. It's a pretty ramshackle construction anyway.
I have a chainsaw.
Yeah, me too.
Me,
Um,
great.
Okay. We'll cut it into little pieces that we can carry out. But ruin them based on hitting a nail. I guess we need to do a little site visit or somebody needs to go out there and take some pictures or whatever else, and we can make an assessment about that. So that might be a high priority, given what you're talking about as a safety risk. I know
Yes.
it's been sitting out there for a while, but I guess let's make that. Why don't you go add it to your list, Joyce, of higher priority for little site visits? And I don't know if anybody else wants to go see it themselves. I assume in the report there's enough of a map that somebody could figure out where it is.
The the Sherborn Walks book actually shows the route of the abandoned trail.
Okay,
It's not an easy trail to follow. That's the thing. I mean, I think you could, I managed, you sort of pick up the trace of it in the summertime. But it's not real easy to follow. If there was snow on the ground, I think it would be very difficult I mean, you could sort of find your way to the bridge, but you might not necessarily be on the trail. I think in the springtime, it would be a lot easier to follow that route, because when the ground is clear and everything, there is a faint path that you can still see. But it's not all that easy to find.
okay,
But what I was saying anyway, the Sherborn Walks book does show it. I mean, they've got it sort of as a dashed line, but that shows it pretty accurately. So it's shortly after you park at the cul-de-sac, you're going the main trail. Then this abandoned trail just branches off to the left very soon after you enter the main trail.
is it all wet now with all the high groundwater and everything?
I think it would be pretty soggy and now, yeah.
Okay, so though it's a priority, are we saying that we're gonna put it off to drier, better weather to go see this thing and assume nobody's going out there to hurt themselves on it? People, to what extent are we removing its high priority-ness and let it sit?
Well, I don't think anybody can remove it if it's in the middle of a soggy mess right now.
Okay. So we'll revisit that site when it's a little drier out there and maybe the weather is a little better. Or the trail might be better, or Ted's recovered from his
I
surgery.
mean, we did find it on our last site visit to Hidden Meadow, so I don't think it's something that we necessarily need Ted to show us where it is. It's
Okay.
not hard to find.
Who
But
wants to go there? Do you want Joyce to do it? Do some of the members want to go there and do a reconnaissance and assessment of that?
happy to
And,
go with whoever.
Yeah, I'd be happy to go, especially with someone who knows where it is.
We're gonna leave you out.
You go. Thanks, Kurt.
Yes, we'll know why you're not at the next meeting, but was that something people want to do this? I mean, I don't know whether how we coordinate this thing, whether it's
Nobody's
people-
doing anything this coming week. It's school vacation week.
Oh, does that mean people are going away? Or people are around over the weekend or the week?
Or maybe babysitting. Sorry.
Okay. I'm just struggling to figure out how we do this, whether we do a doodle or we just, people throw out sometimes whether they want to go away this weekend, or do we do a doodle?
Michael, I don't think there's really urgency about it.
Okay, well, it's still something fun for people to do if they want, but
It is.
okay.
But I think maybe waiting and, well, I don't know, waiting for what? Can I ask what the status is of the DPW recommendations? Did you suggest that we could start talking with Sean now about implementing those recommendations, or should the commission go over them in detail?
I would think that, let's see. I think we should, it's incumbent, oh, this is the summary. What happened to the, the tables? I guess we need to read it.
Okay,
I think we, it's, I thought there might be some summary tables here or something like that, but,
They're with each, yeah, there's one for Bailey, yeah,
okay,
yeah.
fine. It's looks like it says it's 14 pages. Okay. Why don't we put this on the agenda for our next meeting and leave ourselves some time to talk about it, and people should read this and we'll go through them. A week, I don't know, we have two other things tonight. So I would say, why doesn't everybody read it and we get prepared and we leave a good half an hour, 45 minutes at the next meeting, depending on what other things are there, and we march through it and see how far we get, and maybe focus on the DPW stuff. Steve?
Just a quick question on the DPW stuff, and then they pretty much select for grasses. And I don't know if part of this vegetation management plan considers non-grass meadow species that might be desirable.
what do you, there, one major example, I think, of what you're saying is that Ted has recommended and the commission approved earlier that of the three main large barber fields, the middle one be left unmowed for a couple of years to allow the non-grasses to develop for better habitat. Is that what the kind of thing you're talking about?
Pretty much. I mean, there's the goldenrods, asters, and of course, milkweed and other things like that.
Yeah, looking at the three big meadows, or actually you can include a little north there too. So there are four meadows, and they all have milkweeds, Joe Pye weeds, goldenrods, and asters mixed in with the grasses. And the challenge is that all of those fields, except really for middle, to a lesser extent middle, is that they all have a lot of invasive species, not grasses. I'm not talking about invasive grasses. I'm talking about that you've got buckthorn moving into them. You've got bittersweet. You've got, even in one instance, you've got some black locust moving in. So the difficulty with, in my view, of letting the field sort of develop and mature, which would be good theoretically for pollinating insects and so forth, is that the invasives are just going to increase exponentially if you just let the fields go. So the thought was, or just the way of thinking was to let that happen with the middle field, where there are fewer invasives, significantly fewer invasives. It's a higher and somewhat drier field. And just for 3 years, just let that field develop as an old field without mowing it, and just kind of evaluating it year by year to see, what's going to come up there. But I think with each of the other fields, the invasives problems are such that it would be creating problems for ourselves in the future if we aren't continuing, at least for a while, to treat to mow them annually and to cut back those invasives annually. And not only that, I mean, which would be DPW work, but also to have a contractor or whatever come in and weed whack particular populations in addition to the regular mowing, to just try to minimize them as quickly as possible.
Okay, I guess, I mean, before I stop sharing, I could see how we could search for DPW, and we could start next time of just going through and looking at every DPW reference here. And just saying, or if we had any questions, we could bring them up, but we could basically work through that part fairly simply, and then maybe tackle a particular parcel and
Right.
see what we think, and march through them.
I can put together all the DPW recommendations because there's a limited number of fields.
Yeah,
and
right. We can
W
even-
recommendations are only applicable to field management and borders. And I can isolate those, highlight the changes recommended, and send it out to you all.
Okay. Yeah, or if we can find, you could do that, or I see, yeah, I guess there's a bunch of DPW and or contractor ones where they're related to, trails. So I guess there's a set of other things that, whether we're gonna get them involved in, doing some trail maintenance. Is that something that you think is gonna be practical? To get them involved in trail stuff that I see here?
I'll just clarify one thing, Mike. There are a couple of instances where I say trail, but it's more like a roadway, like at Barber. I kind of call it a trail, but
Oh, yeah.
but I'm sort of talking about some of the erosion problems on, some of the roads that are kind of near the power lines. So, and who would deal with that?
Okay. So we can look at that as part of when we look at each parcel and just sort of highlight what we think of things. I mean, right, we can, in a meeting, people can have their own conclusions, but we could also just mark up something to give back. Okay. Good. This will be exciting to tackle. I appreciate the work. Anybody else have any questions or comments? And we'll just put it on our next agenda and tackle some of this. Hearing none. I will thank everybody who came for this, and we'll get back to you as we do things. We'll email you back what we think, so you don't have to. And if we have a collection of questions, we know where to find you and ask it. And maybe we invite you back at some point to go over a bunch of it or something like that, so that we use your time judiciously.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Good to see you.
Okay, nice to see everybody there. Okay, let's see. We now have our 8 o'clock hearing. And now reopening the hearing on drafting regulatory changes. I was going to suggest I sent out 3 files with some pulling together of a set of some stuff there. Sorry I didn't get to putting all the revisions in the bigger master file, but I tried to pull out a bunch of things on definitions, a couple of things, and then some issues. I was going to suggest right now we just march through those files. Does anybody have an alternative thing to do, or is that okay?
Sounds good.
I'm going to just share the screen. And I guess I'll share the whole thing just in case. I want to do more than one file. Okay, I guess we'll start with the stickier, this whole definitions thing. Should people read this? Because maybe people didn't read it beforehand. Should I leave this up there as Is this large enough? Should I make it bigger?
It's readable.
I think it's fine, for me at least.
I think it's fine.
Okay. I'll let you read this intro if you haven't already. I don't know to what extent I should expect people to do their homework or not.
I read it.
I read it and sent comments.
And then there's a note to the lawyers here.
Kurt, you're a better lawyer than me.
I'm still trying to find the, oh, there it is. Okay. Couldn't find it.
I was trying to see if anybody noticed it. It's like those things where people write, if you've read this line, let me know.
I don't think it's a really deeply technical legal question. It's
Right.
about capitalization, so.
Yes, it's not a big deal. I just, having just gone through a contract where everybody made a big deal about capitalizing anything that was defined under definitions, so that people could do that. I didn't know if it was something that's done in general, because we might want to do it ourselves.
You're probably fine as long as you're consistent, as long as you're not changing it up. Because then there could be a question of why is one capitalized and one not. Otherwise, you should be good as long as you're consistent throughout.
Okay, is there a value to people thinking that we capitalize stuff that we define? Or that just leads to too much excess capitalization?
Sounds like you're feeling it, Michael, that it adds value. And if you think it does,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't
Okay.
think it gets too capitalized, so I haven't seen the
I
impact.
think the question here is whether how much time you want to spend going through the entire body of existing regulations, making it all consistent.
I guess you've touche.
Jacob got the crux of the matter.
Okay, moving on. Let's go deal with oh God, this. Guess you can't get rid of the page breaks in this online thing. So I guess I'll try to persist versus whether I just bring up the file myself. Here is the definition changes for bank. I could scroll down to show other things, but maybe Joyce can answer the question in there.
Well, oftentimes mean annual flood elevation is observed, not calculated.
Okay.
100-year flood is typically something that's calculated.
But the mean, right, isn't the about being the mean annual flow level.
Mean annual flood. Oh, flow level. Yeah.
Oh, actually, is it flood or flow?
Well,
flood,
I see
flow.
both there, so I'm not sure.
I
have
know,
to go back
this
and
must
look
be
at
the
it.
right one, because that's what I copied from our thing, but I guess what I meant over here was
You've got it both ways though, in that sentence.
oh yeah, right. Oh geez. What is it?
I don't know.
Michael, can I ask a higher level question around this topic? So
Sure.
you had a bunch of comments around should we use a different definition than the state in terms of how we define where the bank of a stream
Right.
or river or whatever is. And I wonder if that's actually the wrong question to be asking, because if we try and have a different definition of bank, it sounds like what you're trying to protect is actually the land subject to flooding that's next to the stream or bank, not so much being interested in redefining where the bank itself is. Because if you actually go look through the not the definition, the why is this important part of the regs, the state regs, sort of the motivation section of the regs, they're talking about things that actually happen at the bank more so than is is there a broader thing that you're trying to call a bank that's really more to do with flood levels, which would have different interests? So I
Yeah,
guess
I
should
guess
we?
it is. You're right. I mean, that's what got, yeah, I think that's what I was going at. I mean, that's where I put the thing here of, if there's other wetland resources, then we don't have to worry about it. Right, I'm trying to protect an area that has flood control value. And whether it fall under, I don't know if it would fall under land subject to flooding.
I'm not sure either, because there's a couple different versions of land subject to flooding with different levels of protection. But I wonder if that's actually more useful than trying to redefine where the banks are.
I don't know.
Jacob makes a really good point. What is your goal with that's an excellent point, Jacob.
Well, I said that's my goal, is to protect that the mean annual flood level, whichever
So we have protections for isolated land subject to flooding. Do we have? I don't remember. Do we have anything for bordering land subject to flooding?
Yeah.
That I don't. I've heard that phrase, but I don't remember why.
Yes, we do. Here it is.
That's second and third page.
I have to shrink it a little because this thing doesn't.
So most times, bordering land subject to flooding is a floodplain defined by FEMA, and that's fixed. That's not subject to the bank.
Yes, I think I think it overlaps, but not totally. I mean, down here is the definition that I'm suggesting versus what we had now, which was much more specific, but I think some of that stuff could change. So I was just going back to references to reference the state details, because it's a little bit more involved than just this thing here. I don't think I have any more. Because yeah, the land such flooding is a statistical thing. I guess I see it as a little bit different. It might overlap. I mean, I don't want to go nuts over this because I don't know how many cases really the bank. Right, I don't know if this definition is if it's observed, if so. I guess, or if I guess cannot, I think is what I meant here. Yeah, that's what I meant. I mean, I got rid of this thing here so you could read it. And I try to capture. I'm open to other people's thing. This is my cut at it.
I think one of my thoughts all along in the various definitional things is there an advantage to having something that seems reasonably satisfactory as a general description, kind of like your first sentence there, being between here and there, and that's where the bank is, and then refer to the state regs, because every time they change, we don't have to change our regulation. We just, if there's a new state regulation, when you look at the new state regs, we'll salute and say, yep, that's what we had in mind too, unless we disagree with them. But in the meantime, we don't have to immediately go back and reword.
Well, they'll always hold if they're more strict than ours. So
Mhm.
this is a case where we're more strict than the state for now, if that ever changes. So,
I'm uncomfortable with bank being one of the things that we define totally differently from the state, because I actually find the state version simpler to understand, and I don't find this version simple to understand or apply.
Fine
okay,
with
I guess we can have a difference of opinion and we just have to make a we just have to sort it out one way or another, whether people feel like they want to do this or just go to back to the state one, which is different, which is a little lower, but I understand the clarity issue. It's a little more defined. I guess it's only for me is the issue of with all the kind of flooding and precipitation events that I don't mind going a little further than the state, but that's just me.
I just, yeah,
Recently outvoted. I don't mind.
challenge. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just gonna say, you can outvote me. It's just a
So-
matter of us, let's make a decision.
So if the bank is, you're saying, did you just say, Michael, that the definition under Sherborn would make the bank lower?
No, it would make it possibly more extensive.
Oh, Joyce, go ahead. Who are we?
No, I'm thinking.
So part of my concern here is that by defining it primarily by the mean annual flood level, I worry that in many cases we won't know where the mean annual flood level. Sometimes of the year we might be able to observe, okay, there was a flood here, but it was just the most recent one. There are sometimes you can observe where the mean annual flood level is, but that's going to be pretty limited. Something where you've got a vertical rock wall, or there's probably others, but sometimes you can tell, yeah, it floods up to this point every year, but I don't know how common those are going to be. And
Actually,
it'll be at a completely different place from where the edge of the natural bank is.
I guess flood level and flow level are the two different terms now that I'm reading this again and seeing underneath, which is the state definitions with the crossouts. Where the state has the first observable break, or I mean, the state still involves those things here. It still involves doing either the mean annual low flow level, and then also the flood level could be the upper boundary. And right, the upper boundary I just have is the break or the mean if the can't be calculated, but whatever. I don't know. This is something that sort of works for me, even though it's not as intuitive maybe. But I guess I just wanna
Well,
the state-
I have a question. So it says the upper boundary can be the first observable break if there are additional wetland resources present above the break, or if the mean annual flood level cannot be calculated.
or observed, calculator
What if,
observed.
what if there are not additional wetland resources present above the break? And what if the annual flood level can be observed? Then how would we determine the upper boundary? I feel like it's a little.
I see, let me think. Well, it just says it can be, but the, up here it says the upper bound is being the mean annual flow. In the first sentence.
Yeah, I think I see what you're trying to do. I think it's and also saying it can be is I have a problem with that phrasing as well. It's not very clear. I mean, just saying something can be something doesn't mean that it's hard to define something by saying it can be something.
Well, they can choose to use that definition, is all I was trying to get at. But I guess I'm creating more time
Indeterminacy.
waste, whether I guess we just need to know, do people want, I guess I don't know whether to pose it as, do we want to just go back to the state one, which is lower or smaller, and somehow seems simpler? Or do we want something that is more extensive and might be more complicated to word? I'll do a straw poll. That's, I don't know how people want to do this so that we could move on. This is not one of the bigger issues that I want to drive us nuts about with my going too far maybe in the weeds.
So can I just ask one, I'm just trying to understand your perspective. Why do you think the state definition provides you with a lesser location?
I mean, a smaller area of protection.
Okay.
But I don't think it does, because it says it would be if the mean annual flood level is higher than the first observable break, then it's the mean annual flood level.
Yeah, but the
No,
which is
so-
high, actually, the problem is the which is higher is what we had. The state has whichever is lower.
So, for
So-
example, think about the way that Charles is right now. So it's in, or at least a week ago or whatever, it was definitely in flood, and it's above what I would call the bank. It's quite a bit higher than what if you look at it during the rest of the year, it's quite a bit higher than that. And I'm not sure if this year is average or not. So I'm not sure whether the current flood level is representative of a mean annual flood level or not, but it's definitely higher than the bank. And that's another problem, sort of it differs from the common language meaning of the bank.
Yeah.
And so what we're observing now could be flood stage, and that wouldn't be, like you just said, mean annual.
It could, all right. I don't know whether what we're observing right now is above or below mean annual flood. I have no way of, I don't know. I would say it counts as land subject to flooding, clearly. One of those, and we should
I don't
therefore
know
try
about
to
how that'll. Okay. Or mean annual flood level, whichever is lower. This is the, I think I tried to clean up. This is the state definition. I'll do a straw poll. Read it. Straw poll whether people want to go back to the simpler state one. That has a little less jurisdiction versus the more complicated. It could even be rewritten a little bit of what is posed above. So it doesn't have to be the final on any of this, but I would like to move on to other things. Or is it worth doing? Should I do it as a straw poll? Does that help people? Okay, Kurt?
Well,
Or
I was gonna. I think there's a
Okay.
way to make your definition work. I just think that we're not there yet. So I'm fine with increasing it. I don't think it makes sense exactly the way we're doing it here.
Okay, so we could re-wordsmith this one, or you can come up with something.
Yeah.
I would say if Kurt can come up with something better, I'd like to look at it and we move on from this topic.
Second,
Right.
All in
I'll send
favor?
something.
Oh, that was the most enthusiastic.
Oh.
Okay, Kurt. you
I'll send
inherit this
something.
one.
Yeah.
Okay, 3:25, I see, I assume that that's Bob there. We'll get to that at 8:30, or maybe before I go on to us to another, yes, if we get into another mind bender on bordering land, I'm going to propose, before we do that, that whether I continue this hearing till, let's say, 9 o'clock, or I guess even, I don't know how long it's going to take to deal with the other stuff, maybe 8:50. I mean, it could always, I'm going to continue it to that, and then we can move on to a discussion item on the farm road homes. And as Bob is here, I move to continue this hearing until 8:50.
Second,
Okay. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Michael, aye. Terry,
aye.
Jacob,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Kurt,
Aye.
Courtney,
Aye.
Matt.
All right,
Okay. What I'm going to do now is, let's see here. I'm going to pull up a,
That is Allison, that's not Bob.
Sorry, this is me, and I'm sorry, I should have jumped in and said earlier, Bob is like on his way. He'll be there in like 3 minutes, I think. So he knows about the 8:30 time, but he's not quite here.
he's not quite here. Okay, well, I'll give a little intro.
Thank you.
And then I'll dance and I'll get a hat and a cane. Let's see. I'm gonna bring up here. Here's a file that I started marking up. Get this thing out of the way here. It's gonna work here. I assume you see a dark band across the top. Okay.
No, that's just you.
That's, oh, geez, I'm hallucinating. Okay, oh yeah, now it went. This was a file, we sent in comments back in October of last year. We wrestled through a whole bunch of comments that we sent to the ZBA, which went through what the alterations were on the thing there. And then we scrolled through, we had ideas about recommended mitigation because of all the work in the buffer zone. Under the local regs, there's a buffer zone to this isolated wetland there, subject to flooding. And so there was a lot of work going there, and we felt that there was some mitigation needed, and we came up with the idea of that they needed to do a vegetation plan that's more extensive than their landscape stuff. And then we had some other recommendations around lighting as well as around the septic system that is there. And this never got addressed in the meeting, and it looks like they're not, that it won't get sent to the peer reviewer. And the message at the last meeting was, if we want some conditions, then we have to draft them and send it to them. We're not gonna and see whether they'll entertain them. And so I had sent in the coal tar thing separately after we did it with the other project. So in the end, I'm trying to figure out whether we could walk through this thing and rough out, and it doesn't have to be finalized tonight. We could just sort of vote on it a little and go through and come up and get some input and dialogue with Bob to see if we can come up with some things that we could propose for the ZBA to consider as conditions in their comprehensive permit. I mean, these are sort of a little summary thing of what they are here, but I was just gonna I was trying to turn some of our text into actual conditions as opposed to the trickiest one is the planting plan, where we recommended here is a whole section where we came up with a rationale of what that something should be done, a study or some evaluation should be done during the ZBA comprehensive permit process. But that's obviously that's turning out not to happen. We stated that the landscape plan that they had was inadequate here, and we wanted the peer reviewer to comment on that. That doesn't seem to be happening. So I was, I'll wait until Bob gets here. Should I pull up the plan of what we're talking about for this buffer zone? Would that help for refreshing people's mind?
That would
Yes,
be,
please.
Okay, then things will go a little blank here where let's see here. Road. Just find the right thing here. It's this one. This is hard to read. Let me get the real site plan here. Sorry, I didn't have this ready. Okay. Whoops. Oh, there we go. Okay. I'm going to do it so we can actually see it a little side by side. And I assume Allison's going to tell us when Bob really shows up.
He's in the house and turning on his computer.
see,
He was
I'm
just
assuming he'll
scrambling back.
just here.
We want to have it inch by inch.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, on the left side here, and it's
Side by side is like, it's just so small.
I know I was going to enlarge it. There it is. I was trying to get down to this plus sign. And this is not the current one because I think it's getting redone based on observations. Okay. Here is the part of the plan on that was related to the vegetation versus the septic issues. So here's the pond, and there is the 100-foot buffer zone and the 50-foot buffer, and here's a wetland delineation, which and then there's an issue of whether this land subject to flooding is really bigger than this based on observations. I guess, Joyce, is this, what was this delineation of? This is a wetland line for what? We just called it a wetland line here. What is it called? Is it isolated land?
My
Isolated
reception
BBW?
is really poor.
The what?
My reception is really poor. If you ask me a question, I did not hear it.
Oh, what wetland in particular was delineated when we did this? Was this isolated land subject to flooding or some sort of BVW, I guess? Because
It
right
was edge of vegetated wetlands and soils. The wetland line is the edge of the wetland.
Is that vegetated wetlands, freshwater wetlands, as opposed to land subject to flooding?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, so it isn't
So
just,
the flooding that's out there this spring is beyond that wetland line, but that's flood line, not wetland line.
okay, so we have two different resources here. Is that to be clear?
Yes.
Okay. I see that Bob's here now. I'm assuming that can hear us. Hey there.
Good evening.
Yes. So as I gave a little intro to them after the last CBA meeting, that they weren't seeming to deal with our comments that we had sent to the ZBA last October, and seemed to put it back on us to say, okay, if you want something, write it up. And so,
Well, I can't help you with your interaction with ZBA, of course, but I'll help you with any information I can give you.
sure, no, I don't expect that. We're just gonna, I just wanted to do it with you here. You could maybe help with things that may be more amenable or something like
Sure.
that. And
Sure,
stuff
of
like
course.
that, or maybe we won't agree, and we'll send something in and you could write some comments on it. So,
Yeah. Did Joyce, I apologize for joining late. Did Joyce explain to you what we did with regard to the flooding? We went out on what
Yeah,
we
we-
believe was approximately the worst day and staked it out so that we had an actual surveyed kind of line of the flooding. And what we realized is that over the last, I can't remember, 40 years or so, as long as there's been aerial photography, this is equal to the worst it's ever been. There were 2 other years over that whatever period of time where it came to almost exactly the same place, which is according to the engineer. And as you all know, I have no expertise in this, but according to the engineer, that was quite interesting that the 3 times it was the worst, it stopped at the same place, as though there was some geological reason for that or something. But anyway, that's so we did stake that and we surveyed it.
so
um,
the
so that-
isolated land subject to flooding is something a little bit bigger that you're resurveying, and that'll be used for some of the stormwater management stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, in the stormwater management. What the definitions, Michael, isolated land and subject to flooding and such, I don't understand those. Joyce and you and Deshang can talk about that. I can just say that's where it's flooded to.
Right, yeah, that's what, so it's a separate, there's resources here of sort of freshwater.
It's certainly a separate
yeah,
issue for us to deal with, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah.
And so for us, in terms of dealing with the, I guess, now that I'm thinking that some of the issues will be dealt with, I guess you have to do a notice of intent after this process.
What's interesting, just one further point, Michael, that I would make is that
Your mic went out or
What's that?
something. I don't know if anybody else can hear.
Far away. For some reason, you sound very far away.
You were fine for 4.
Huh. That's very strange.
Yeah.
Is it working better now or no?
No, maybe just yell at us.
Well, what I was, all I was going to say is
Okay.
that,
That seems to
That
work.
works.
okay,
Oh.
all I was going to say is that it's interesting, and you'll see this when you see the surveyed drawing that we've done, is that the flood line pretty closely follows the 50-foot setback line, interestingly. Not exactly, of course, but it's a reasonable approximation of the 50-foot setback line, which is kind of curious. And in some ways, we need to obviously, we're respecting your 50-foot line for the most part. And we'll obviously have to deal with the flooding along that same line, if you will. So it's kind of interesting that they, that's random, I'm sure. But it is what it is.
Let me see, I can't tell if it's down here. Oh no, this is not going to show the work there. Okay, never mind. I'm going to go back to this thing here. Okay, so the task for us tonight is to propose some conditioning on a few issues. One of which is that there's going to be a significant amount of work, obviously, in the outer buffer zone here, as well as work in the inner buffer zone here. Because there's all sorts of grading, I think, here, and there's in another plan. I'm not going to go search it out here. I think there's, unless it's changed, there's going to be some stormwater detention pond here, something here, as well as a bunch of grading related to the road here. So I think the limit of work is somewhere going to be both a lot of the outer buffer zone over here, as well as some of the inner buffer zone. And our comments from last time were about the fact that we wanted to have a better vegetation plan for restoring this area here. And I started just quickly drafting something because the one that presented was fairly minimal, the landscape plan of July 17th. Now over here, I guess I'll just see if I get to that makes it even any more legible. We don't have to do the final wordsmithing. That could be done outside of the meeting, but I want to sort of get the general principles of the fact that since we're not going to get more work done on that, unless Bob wants to react to that in the remaining time, but that there's two issues that we have in terms of a vegetation plan. One is for the area of the buffer zone that's altered during construction. And then there's the management of the currently open field, that some of which will be outside of the limit of work. And so the issue is for the, so I was sort of scratching in some notes here about for the area of the buffer zone that's going to be altered, there's two things. There's areas that are related to stormwater detention, and then there'll be other areas that are just altered, such as with grading and other kind of stuff. And so I don't know whether I was trying to, I've said before, and we put it in the last one, is that the stormwater detention work, whether that can be designed, and I know it's a little complicated, that it could be designed as more as rain gardens, which I know doesn't have exactly the same stormwater quality issues as some of the ponds. But it's something that I would like to see that because that would have clearly much more sort of value of wildlife habitat and water quality than just a detention pond. But that's a tricky one because there's what it takes to get a detention, to get all the stormwater standards met. But I would still go ahead with trying to recommend it, and we'll see if it flies through when the peer reviewers are doing the stormwater review and how they do.
Yeah, just a quick update on that, Michael, just kind of for your understanding. We are going to submit, I believe tomorrow, our final stormwater plan. That's been long in coming because it is very complicated. And my only reaction to your idea about a rain garden kind of in the detention pond is the stormwater is very complicated. So to the extent it changes the stormwater plan's ability to do its job, I think that's going to be hard because this is a challenging stormwater situation.
Oh, yeah. No, I can believe it. Well, I guess we'll
but
try.
I'm happy to, I guess I would just say, I'm happy to consider your ideas, and I'm not dismissing them out of hand. I'm just saying that if for some reason it makes the capability of the basin less, that's going to be very difficult because we're up against it.
Yeah, no, I can't tell whether there's adjustments in sizing that can be done, but I'd like them to at least try to see. I mean, I brought it up before. I don't know to what extent the peer reviewer is factoring that in and anything, but I would go ahead and put this thing in here, and then and note that there obviously are stormwater design issues, and note that if they're rain gardens, there'd be operation and maintenance issues that have to be included. in these stormwater standards has a few documents. There's stormwater there's the management document that I don't have the right thing, but there's also this long-term pollution prevention plan. Hey, James, so the trickier one then is all the other altered areas being revegetated. Typically, when we have that kind of stuff, we get into sort of saying, at least, typically we've had a condition of sort of specifying some number of shrubs, plants, kind of general things, and then have a plan that's done later that they finalize with our approval once the construction's getting moved further along. I got the impression from, I guess when I asked Rick about it, that they don't do that kind of thing. But I'm actually rethinking a little bit here about whether when they come with a notice of intent, I guess we do have actual wetlands in a real buffer zone that fall under the state. The problem is, I guess this buffer zone here that we're trying to defend will not, I don't think, it doesn't exist under the state. So we have to proceed with the ZBA part. Sorry, I was thinking here. Question is, what do we want to do about, I mean, in the landscaping plan, there were like 5 trees and doing some wetland mix of things. Question is, do we want to have request that there's more done than 5 trees and some wet mix? And whether we do things to say that we want some trees or some shrubs based on how many square feet are altered, as a way of just at least quantifying it, and we can't get into specifying how it's all done, and we'd have to leave it to the, if this condition got put in, we'd have to leave it to the developer to do their best with it, and they can consult with us if they want. But I don't think we can get into, unless we want to really spend the time here to say we want the trees here, here, and here. And then what kind of shrubs, whether we want to have a bunch of shrubs there, as well as we want to comment on the herbaceous layer beyond, if I remember right here, I think I had it up here, that in the last report, they just said wetland restoration and bottom of it will be New England wetland wet mix is all they have. And then there's a sort of a management plan. I'm going to stop talking here and see whether, I don't know, Joyce, Courtney, any, how do we want to
Joyce
deal
is
with this?
having internet issues. She is no longer in the meeting. She does not have internet.
Oh. Well, we lost one resource there. Do we want to, I don't know what people think. I mean, we've used some density numbers like for shrubs for, I mean, sort of like every 6 by 6 placing, we've come up with a number of shrubs, say that for every 100 square feet or 36 square feet, whatever it is, since we used to do 6 by 6, and then still let it be placed in clumps. But we used to do, sometimes we have done that. And so whether we don't have the areas exactly of what's going to be disturbed, we could ask for it. And then we could come up with the numbers, or we could say that that it could be calculated later based on the actual work, and then a certain number of shrubs and trees.
Michael, can I just comment a little to answer some of your questions real quick?
Sure.
And I also have a question for you. So that black line you're looking at there, the circle, is the 50-foot line to the wetlands. As I said before, that is kind of the flood line also, give or take. It's a little bit different here and there, but it's give or take the same line. So one of my questions is, would you want to put a bunch of plant material in the flood area And it's a question, it's not a challenge to it. I don't know enough about it to know whether that's a good idea or not. What I could tell you about our disturbance within that 50 feet, it's not terribly significant. If you look at the kind of the place where the 50-foot line comes right up to the driveway.
Right here, it's mainly
Yeah,
here.
as I talked to you, Michael, about that Chief Ward, the fire chief, has asked us to move our big water tank to protect not only this community, but also other folks on Farm Road. He wants it closer to Farm Road. And
Big
where
input
we,
over here.
exactly, where we've identified is that it would be just off to the right of the driveway. So we
What do
would
you
be
mean over here?
yeah, I mean, not that far, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 feet into the 50-foot zone, if you will.
Right, so those are areas that were gonna be disturbed anyway, it seems, just in doing the road.
Yeah, and there's gonna be stormwater running down along that driveway. And then you're right, where your cursor is, there's gonna be a big basin in that area. Most of it will be outside of the 50. We're doing everything we can, obviously, to keep outside the 50. Unfortunately, there's a setback to the road, which we have to respect, and therefore we may be pushed a little bit into the 50 in that area, but for the most part, we're trying to stay out of it. So I hope that gives you an idea of
Sure.
where we're going to be.
Is there
The
still
last
gonna
thing
be-
I would say, and I'll stop talking, is that I just wonder, and I know you guys aren't super focused on aesthetics. I would worry a little bit aesthetically that putting a bunch of shrubs in there would almost make what is, I mean, obviously the development is creeping into what is a very nice New England field around a pond. I get that. But what's left is still a very nice New England field around a pond. And I would hesitate to, from an aesthetic perspective, necessarily to clutter it up with plants. If that's really important for the wetlands, and yeah, I mean, certainly let's talk about it, but I guess I would just throw out there aesthetically, it would concern me that it would look kind of more suburban, as opposed to trying to maintain at least some New England field and pond look there, but I'll leave that to you guys.
Sure, no, I'm not thinking
Thanks.
that it would be regimented planting as opposed to sort of a little bit more freeform. I mean, akin to trees with clumps or something like that. So I think there's something there. I'll ask you a question since you brought up this. Is there still gonna be a overflow from this detention pond that's gonna go over to the other wetlands? To the other wetland?
There's another detention pond on the other side there.
But
On
is
the
there
other
still
side of
gonna
the
be?
homes.
Sorry, hold
Whoops.
on. I guess, is there still gonna be a
A
connection?
detention pond there,
here?
yes.
But is that gonna
Well,
be? linked
there
to
won't
this
be,
wetland here?
no, originally we talked about there being a pipe
Yeah,
that handled the overflow. I do not believe that is the current plan. I believe the current plan is to just let it overflow a little bit. Again, that's I shouldn't be talking about this because I have no expertise, but my
Fine, we'll
memory
find
is
out.
that's like a, multi-year storm that overflow works for. And I think the current, and you'll see this tomorrow when you get the plan, but it's not going to have a pipe in that easement zone is
Okay,
is
fine.
the short
That's
answer.
something that, yeah, that just raised some, that's sort of the whole wetland issue.
No, I know. That's why we changed it, to be honest with you.
Okay, okay, so coming back, right, I mean, those are questions for us to decide about whether what we want to recommend about in the revegetated areas and whether we just give some densities. It might not turn out to be that many plants and and we'll leave it to them to do it because I think it's beyond. Courtney, how do you want to resolve this? And Terry?
Well, if this was a NOI that came before us under our regulations, we would look at the existing conditions. A lot of that is field. in the top part, I'm imagining some of that was wooded maybe. We would want to know how much of that natural buffer is being converted to impervious surface area. And to Bob's point, I would probably, since it's in a wet meadow condition, would want to maintain a lot of that as wet meadow. But given that we're putting all this impervious area in a buffer zone that's currently nice and pervious and semi-natural, you know, there would be additional filtering and habitat provided by adding a little bit of variety to the vegetation along the paved areas, and potentially up. I don't remember exactly where the tree line starts. Towards the top of the.
Yeah, I'm not sure, right in
I
there.
think it's
Right.
right around the wetland line, Courtney.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, oftentimes too, tree planting would depend on how many trees are coming down, and we have a basic formula now for what we would ask to be planted. So I mean, I don't see how this would be terribly complicated for, you know, a project in the outer buffer zone. It should be pretty straightforward to say how many trees or shrubs we want, and generally, you know, we could talk about rough areas where they would go, and then leave the exact species and placement based on, you know, field observations. And usually the only other specification is that they have to be native species.
And survivability, sort of how long they survive, how
Yeah.
long we observe them for. The other bit would be which ones are appropriate for wetter versus drier areas, but that's a figured out later.
Yeah, I would imagine that could also be a field decision. I mean, the developer doesn't want to put in something that's not going to survive. So,
Yeah. I mean, part of this is here, I mean, this is old, I mean, things are changing. But this was the old landscaping plan, and some of the issues of what's field versus keeping field. There's gonna be a lot of grading here. So that in the end, it's not necessarily just the same level as
right.
field stuff. That's where more vegetation could be done, as you said, gives more filtering.
So for example, if you were going to plant, you know, maple trees along the driveway, and then that steep slope, perhaps that would have more low growing shrubby vegetation or other things planted in it, and the rest of the field would be mowed once a year. You know, that's pretty typical of what we would come up with.
Right, question is, how do we come up with it? I guess I'll let Steve and Terry or whatever, I don't know if Terry still wanted to speak, Steve speak.
Okay, I want to back up. I'm sorry. To be very clear on what those, when you staked out that, can we go back to the other map, Michael? The one that,
So,
that one, you said you staked out the water line in recent high water marks. Is that correct? Did I hear that correct?
I mean, Steve, I'm not an engineer, so I may not use the right language. But the idea is that we stake the flooding line, and what you call that from a regulatory perspective, I'll let you guys figure out.
isolated land subject to flooding.
Yeah, okay.
Is that represented here?
That's
No,
not,
it's not. It's not.
it's
No.
not, that isn't
But,
done.
but what I was saying,
Yeah.
Steve, earlier is that when you get that line, you will see that it actually is very similar to the 50-foot setback line. But you're not seeing it on this. This is a very old plan that Michael's got up.
Okay, so the high water mark would be where that solid line is approximately.
Like I said, approximately,
Roughly.
yes. Yeah.
Okay, just looking at the aerial photos of that place where you're hoping to put a tank or a basin or whatever.
Yeah.
Not sure there's enough, looking at the flooded land then, I'm not sure there's enough room to put that in that lower left corner of the
Yeah,
field
so,
area.
so Steve, are you looking at the aerial photos that were provided by one of the abutters?
I'm looking at historical Google
But-
Earth.
But,
photos.
well, but how are you calibrating where those photos are on the?
I'm gonna intervene a little here since we have a lot of stuff. That tank issue is not our concern really. They have to figure that out. The stormwater people in the fire department will have to figure that out. And it's gonna be a buried tank. And this whole area is gonna be altered anyway between doing the
Okay,
road. and stuff.
that's not really my main point anyways. All right, just so.
Okay, what was your, where are you going then?
Oh, okay, so is the buffer zone, right now it's labeled as a 50-foot no alteration zone, but if that's the edge of flooded land, that's not the edge of, they don't have to have a buffer zone from that?
No. That's my understanding. Again, I'm not an expert, but
There
my
is-
understanding is no.
At the local level, there is.
Yes, I agree with that.
state level.
That's correct. Yes.
Yes, so there could be that there's a buffer zone there that doesn't exist in the state that does go beyond.
Correct. I agree with
And
that.
so there is.
That's the dotted line. That's the dotted line is your local buffer zone.
Well, that's our local buffer zone for these,
Mhm.
for this.
For the wetlands, yeah.
Vegetate, for the freshwater wetlands.
Yeah.
Now, but there's a different buffer zone for, it's two different resources. There's the isolated land subject to flooding, and then there is this vegetated wetlands here.
And is
And
that buffer also, what is that number? I don't know that rule, Michael.
they're both the town bylaw has the same 100-foot buffer on any resource area. And so therefore, and that includes the isolated land subject to flooding. So in essence, could be another another resource line, which could be out here, and then another buffer zone and no alteration
Yes.
zone on top of
I-
that.
I
And
agree with
especially,
that. Yes. Yep.
So, I mean, so there is more could be dealt with. I'm just trying to figure out in what limited resources we have now, because those things will not exist when they file an NOI. And so we don't have the same access to information or asking for things that we have if it was done under a notice of intent to us, where all the kind of standard stuff we would do would be, would be easy. How many trees you cut, how many this and that. So we have to do it through the ZBA. And so I'm trying to figure out, and we're a little behind on schedule of thinking about that. So we have to figure out because the hearing's gonna close at some point soon. And we could figure out whether there's a set of questions we want to ask to finalize this. I can't remember when
Michael, can I ask
Yeah.
a more specific question about what we might do? So let's say let's go over to conditions we might write. And one of our conditions, again, following Courtney's example of use the same practice we would follow in an NOI, is maybe we would write something of the form trees trees in the buffer zone. Any tree removed in the buffer zone will be replaced to at least 1-to-1 with a native species or something of that form. Is that the kind of thing we could say here, or would
Yes,
we
I think so.
run into problems of we'd have to be much more specific around, well, buffer zone with respect to which set of rules and which buffer zone are we talking about?
No, I
We-
think,
We're just talking about our own bylaw for the ZBA and anything that we would normally do under our bylaw that's what we want to tell them.
Okay, so
Um,
then, so the area of the buffer zone around isolated land subject to flooding under our bylaw would be much bigger than anything we've seen on any of the plans here.
Right. And the question
And
is, how much do we
therefore,
want to tackle that versus,
Time
Yeah.
out. So you're saying isolated land subject to flooding has a buffer zone?
I don't remember.
under our bylaw, it does. We don't, the bylaw is worded in a way that says there's a buffer zone around all resources except for riverfront.
Okay.
Now, we have options, I'd be right, to start getting into, I'm having enough trouble whether we can do something around here. Obviously, one could start saying, oh geez, do we want to add that this area here that might be done, or there's all this here? Do we want mitigation for this? But I'm trying to be practical about what it is we can get the ZBA to actually put in the permit versus
Well, with that much larger buffer zone, it sounds like we could that greatly increases the areas that can be planted afterwards. It's not just it's broader than just the existing field around the pond, because we want to keep the existing field around the pond with meadow species, or at least primarily, maybe not along the road, but except for that.
right. I mean, the landscape, I don't know, this is the old landscaping plan where behind, if we're going beyond the road, they have, these are probably, I assume this is backyards and stormwater detention here. And it's quite disconnected from the wetland itself. I mean, I myself have some issues sometimes about what do you gain by doing something that's separated by a road and a whole bunch of other stuff. In terms of
You
values.
still have all the interests that trees give us.
Yeah, I guess they give something, but I'm trying to tie it back to the wetland resource. But yeah, no, people could feel what they want to do more there. I'm trying to see what this legend is here. Okay, so that is seeding, that whole area there. Mix. So all these other things. So that's the grass. So right, this is all grass. This is some sort of seeding with some trees. Right. I mean, we could recommend that there's some more. Here's the limit of work. That there could be some more plantings here. This plus sign is, I think, some sort of meadow mix or something up above. And right, whether saying, oh, there should be less lawn or things like that. Question is, how do we get to some closure on this? Quickly, they have their next meeting is on February 27th, February 26th. I don't know how much more the hearing is going on. It'll probably go a little bit beyond, because I don't know where they all have the stormwater is going to come out and where they've resolved all the septic stuff. Bob, I guess if you're still there, when is the hearing you expect it'll close? And whether there's time to work with you on some of this stuff.
Sorry, I'm eating my supper while I'm listening.
Okay.
So the hearing is on, as you said, I think it's the 27th, a Tuesday night.
26th. It's actually, I have it as a Monday night.
26th, yeah. And excuse me, I would guess that there will be one last extension. We're on extension right now.
Right, yeah.
But my guess is, because we're just giving them the stormwater tomorrow, it's been us. We've been slow on some of these things for some reasons really unrelated to the project, related to kind of folks on my team. But because we're giving that to them tomorrow, I think we will highly likely give them a further extension beyond 2 weeks from, well, what, I guess a little more than 2 weeks from, right? That meeting is a little more than 2 weeks from right now.
Oh, no,
And
well, a little, I guess, right.
oh, a
It's
couple days less
10
than 2
days.
weeks. Sorry.
Yes, whatever.
Anyway, my point is, I think we will highly likely give them another extension. But that will almost certainly be the last extension. In other words, we want to give them a reasonable amount of time to digest this last piece that we're giving them tomorrow.
Okay, but the
So
extension.
I would guess, you know, a month or 5 weeks from now, it will close if I had to guess.
Okay, so at least after 2 weeks of that. No, I'm also just looking about when our next meeting is and stuff like that. Which is on the 7th of March, but it looks like it'll go beyond the 7th, although one can't guarantee that. Okay, the question is, do we want to, as to what Courtney said or Jacob said, do we want to ask and see whether he would, the project team will give us some information that we would basically use to specify some sort of planting stuff, or do we want to do sort of density and numbers? I'm trying to figure out that. So, and Steve, what do you want to say?
Oh, I'm sorry,
Terry never got, I guess, Terry, you've never gotten to speak. Sorry. Some people have to
No
push.
worries. I just wanted to make one little note that I'm looking at kind of the topography, even if this is an old plan for basins B1 and C, fairly steep sided, and a rain garden shrubbery would not go in the base of the basin. It'd be, you know, along the sides nearer the top, and certainly would help with stormwater management and help to draw, and transpiration would pull up moisture sooner if those plantings are there. I would be more of a fan of giving sort of the formula you were mentioning before, Courtney, of saying in general, we want at least a 1-for-1 replacement of trees that are removed. And I also am with Michael that those belong on the wetlands side of the road rather than tucked, you know, behind houses where they're not really ameliorating the situation of the wetland itself. So I think there's much that could be done that's a little more formulaic, saying in general, we would expect, you know, shrub for shrub, tree for tree. I was a little confused when you showed us briefly the sort of the little legend up at the top. Is the NE Northeast or New England? I mean, the ecoregion matters very much, and what you would plant in Pennsylvania is not necessarily what would fare well up here for wet mix or meadow wildflower.
That comes from New England wetland plants.
Oh, okay, fine.
Yeah.
Thanks. Newbie question.
Terry, just to clarify something, there's this land is almost in the area where we're looking at right now, is almost entirely cleared. It's all field. There's pretty much, there's some dead trees along the road.
Right, I guess, you know, there's some tree.
Thanks, Bob.
But where a lot of where the houses are, which would be in the buffer zone of the isolated land subject to flooding, is not.
That is correct. Absolutely. We're the one place in what you're looking at right now where we will be clearing trees is in the northeast corner of the picture. Those 4 homes, you're right. That is currently, well, it's a little bit cleared actually to the left, but definitely from maybe the middle house to the right. All
about this area here.
Yeah.
But I think it's a fairly safe bet that the road leading in is going to be raised up, and that there will be grading down to that field that leads to the pond. And
Correct.
I don't I
Yes.
don't think I'm sure there's a way we can explain, what we want in terms of trees and shrubs, and to specify that they're only planted on the steep grade next to the road, and that the rest of the meadow is to remain in
Mhm.
the part of the meadow that's unaltered, basically, is going to remain in meadow condition.
Right. It seems like we could give that sort of, bump of direction for them.
Exactly.
Let the details then be resolved later.
Well, we don't have, it's not the same way that we normally do it. I mean, they might want to be happy to work with us in the end, but it's not as strict.
I don't think it's
Not worried about it. Yeah.
I think it's not that hard to write that for every 100 square feet of impervious area, we would like X number of shrubs. For every tree that's taken down, it's in the tree policy, replacement in kind. And
straight species native.
I mean, that gives them a very straightforward formula of what.
Courtney, can I comment for just a second on that? I don't
Yeah.
object to, you guys asking the ZBA for what sounds like is your general way of going with market rate housing. That's totally reasonable. I just, and actually the comment I'm going to make applies much more broadly to, frankly, your review under your regs and then under the state regs. The comment I'm going to make is very broad, and that is, you're also about, as a commission, to review two gigantic projects over on Coolidge Street, one market rate and one a 40B that you still have to do an NOI on, right? And the point I want to make is, all I ask is whatever you do for me, because they are clearing all wooded land up there for those two projects. It's entirely wooded, and a lot of it's in the buffer zone. A ton of it's in the buffer zone. And I just ask that whatever you ask of me here, please just show me the respect of the same rules and the same treatment as those two projects on Coolidge Street. And I think that's a pretty reasonable request on anybody's part, just that there be consistency across projects.
Sure. Yeah, and I mean, one of the things related to the formulas is, if we're talking about tree replacement, and there's a bunch of, let's say, a lot of trees cut here, where do we think that's all going to go? Or do we just, because there's this band here, if we're keeping I mean, maybe some of this could be reforested here a little bit there, because it's that, but that's outside the limit of work. So one of the issues we have is, where would all those trees usefully go on the plan here, besides yeah, I just have that issue of,
I think most of them need to go along in between the limit of work and the driveway, and between the limit of work and the houses on the north end of the pond. However, I doubt all of them are going to fit there. We don't want to
yeah, that's what I
encroach.
meant. That's my point, is that I just wonder whether there's a certain density issue whether it's a formula that includes how many trees.
But the formula also includes, we can use shrubs, and the trees don't all need to go there. I mean,
Right. I think they can go on the other side of the road also. There's something that can go.
right, whatever, like, I'm sure he's gonna have trees in his landscape plan, and the ones that are within, we can ask, because that's what we're doing with the ZBA, is what we're asking for. We would want any trees that are planted in our jurisdiction, we would want them to be native trees. So I think that's
Okay.
I have no complaint about that. Everything I do is native plant material.
Okay, we're gonna have to, I guess I want to come back to a little of this as it's getting on. There's a few other things that I want to run through. On the unaltered field area, do we want to prescribe the sort of one annual mowing or and after a certain season based on what we normally do of after the sort of birds or whatever? I guess what we use ourselves in the Barber Reservation.
Yeah. Right. And that's the same, we put something in for a recent wet meadow mowing, right? I don't know, what did we decide? November? I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think what really
Looking
matters
at-
is it's after the first hard freeze, and we went around on what does that mean date wise.
Right. Well, and practically speaking, it's going to be, they're not going to want to mow. They're going to want to mow when it's dry because they can't get a mower in there when it's wet.
Okay, we'll figure out something there. I'm gonna make a quick run through a bunch of other things that we put in. And we can get some of Bob's reaction as well as our commission reaction. Here's a bunch of other buffer zone recommendations. We have, I stuck in this little arrow here. We now, as we've done on others, we're concerned about lighting in the buffer zone and what it does to habitat. And whether, I guess you guys can read all of these little bullets here and see what you guys think, and gals.
The comment, Michael, I would make about the lighting is that I personally hate outdoor lighting. I tend to usually put way too little lighting on a site. And so what you're going to get from me is the minimum that's required for public safety. And frankly, if it's required for public safety, you're not going to be able to tell me I can't do it, right?
That's what I wrote. That's what's written here, is that it's whatever to achieve.
Okay, yeah, sorry, I can't see your screen because I've
Oh.
got your pictures up in front of that, so.
Michael, is your part 5 have photo cells to turn off lighting when ambient lighting is sufficient really necessary? I would expect lots of things to be programmed based on knowing the date and the time of year and therefore when sunset is.
No, for typically streetlights, like the ones we just put in the town, we replaced them all with LED ones. They do have photo cells.
Sure, yeah, streetlights, yes, but there's lots of houses in the
Jacob,
buffers.
you're talking to the lighting nerd here. He's gonna tell you all about it.
No, well, I don't know. Right. I mean, it's the photo cells, right. I guess I can limit it to the streetlights. And what people put on their houses, hopefully I know I'm amazed at how much lighting goes on at night. I share your concern, your issue, Bob.
I think all it needs is have photo cells or other mechanisms to turn off, and that's sufficient.
The other ones look pretty standard. I think we should ask ZBA about, I think we should request those.
Okay. Bob, the issue of the fill, times you've had some concern about, there's some other thing I want to get to, but I'm gonna skip down to the fill reg that we have, that we would want. That sometimes you've asked a waiver and there was some concern about. I think it's
Yeah, I have actually a strong feeling about that because I've done it before with you, right? And the problem with your regulation is you require that the developer provides you the source of the fill a week in advance. That's not the way the real world works, right? The way fill gets moved around is one earth guy calls another earth guy and says, hey, I got a bunch of fill. And the other guy says, yeah, I can use it, bring it here. And it happens in a day, right?
Let me ask you this, as I think I wrote in another, and I can't tell if it was in this comments or in other comments, that whether you would, whether you have any concerns about complying with it. If if still the testing and the certification is provided, but doesn't have to be done one week in advance. That you still provide that the fill meets these standards.
Well, are you talking about in the buffer zone? Or are you
Yeah,
talking about,
any
because
fill that's used in our jurisdiction, right? The
yeah,
buffers.
I mean, you would in, I don't know if it's this situation or other situations, I recall you're asking for that level of scrutiny across the project, not only in the buffer
I've
zone.
suggested it because the town doesn't have, but it was only a suggestion. This is what.
Yeah,
this
right.
is from.
And I was opposed to
town,
that.
Because the town doesn't have its own regulation about fill, which I think
Right.
it needs to do
Right.
in general. So, but since it's not a.
Yeah, my issues with those regulations are really more about the practicality of complying with them. It's very hard, like in the real world, to deal with those regulations. And honestly, the way that I've dealt with it on other sites where I obviously need to follow your rules. When I'm not in a 40B situation. And what I tend to do is I tell my site guy, okay, you got to cut somewhere, take the earth from that cut on that site and put it in the buffer zone. And then I'm not putting anything in the buffer zone
Oh, yeah,
from
sure.
off-site.
And that's a wonderful outcome.
Right. And that's, to me, that's the logical way of dealing and giving you what you want without my having to go through a lot of impractical, the site guys just roll their eyes, right, at this stuff. And I'm not saying there's not good reason to test earth that's going into the buffer zone. I get it. But, if at all
Well, we
possible,
will,
I avoid it by using earth on the site. That's
Fine, then you're welcome to do that, but we can talk about whether we basically are willing to relax the 1 week prior stuff there. So we'll come
Well,
back.
you certainly, so on Coolidge Street, I looked up the conditions on Coolidge Street and the ZBA, on the Coolidge Crossing, which you guys have not done from the NOI perspective yet, but ZBA already did Coolidge Crossing 3 years ago. And they required of what is now Toll Brothers is that they provide the location, the source location of the fill 24 hours in advance. They didn't require any testing, and they certainly didn't require 1 week of notice.
Sure.
That was what they chose to do. Now, whether they do the same thing, I would hope I would be treated the same as Coolidge Street, but you never know.
Well, yeah, let's see. Then the last thing I want to go to is something we've done, and we did at the fields at Sherborn where there was a large septic field. That was just outside the buffer zone of
Which
the
is what our
wetlands.
condition is here, obviously.
Right, exactly. And what we had done there is, I mean, here, there's two options. One is a little more extreme than we got there. But we basically got, we basically got to do water quality testing in the wetlands area so that we can monitor what happens there over time. I don't know if you can read it here. The first one is putting it on the developer and the condo project to do the testing. I don't necessarily expect that will fly, but I don't mind asking. But the second one down here.
Is that in your regulations, Michael?
No, it's not in the regulations.
Yeah, then, I mean, my reaction, and obviously you guys can ask whatever you want, but my immediate reaction, and it's visceral, is if you don't require this of market rate housing, please don't ask me doing.
We would request it. We would push it if there was any market housing on a septic system of this scale. It's really the scale.
Well, I mean, Farm Road wasn't this scale, I agree with you, but Farm Road was the same condition where we were right up against the buffer zone. I mean, and that system exists today, obviously. We weren't required to do that. So yeah, the scale of the project's a little different. I agree with you.
Yeah, right. That's, well, and we did get this in a previous project to that, but because the only projects we do with large scale are affordable housing ones. So we have it, so I can't say that we don't do it for
Well,
market.
Meadowbrook actually, obviously, they don't have a septic system, in
Right.
Meadowbrook, but Meadowbrook is a large project.
Oh, yeah, no, if they had a
That is
septic-
under your local regulations.
Oh, yeah,
obviously.
no, if it came in with a septic system issue, we would be pushing the same thing there, and we've got it there, so. But this is just something that we will put forth, and you can argue against it, and we can make note that we've done it for the fields. And
I mean, generally, Michael, you know, I want to do the right thing, but I also really bristle at being asked to do things that aren't in the regulations. It just gets very, very difficult to.
Michael,
to
should
do
we,
these.
I mean, we're editing the regulations now. Is this something we should add?
Well,
Septic system?
it won't impact.
No,
I know,
this situation.
unrelated.
Well, we could talk about that. That's something to consider, because back then because it's time to actually redo the fields. We got the baseline stuff done by the Wellesley College, and now it's time to see if some kids want to come back and
We
see.
not rehash this right now. It's 9:30.
Okay, fine. So that's just the last one there. So the issue is, how are we moving forward so do we just, some little subgroup is gonna work on wording the stuff here on the buffer zone stuff and the trees and whatever else. And it looks like we have time to basically just do it more formally, go over it at our next meeting. And see and discuss what the subgroup comes up with, and then we could submit something that we all vote on to the ZBA. And Bob, you're welcome to join us when we discuss it on the 7th, which would be when we would do it. Is that the path forward? And some people here are going to volunteer to help work on this. I've put enough time on some of this stuff. I would like other people to chip in.
I'll
see-
I
help.
personally,
What?
I'll help if nobody else will.
I see a lot of smiles. It's like, okay.
I'll
I'd
help
like to
with
go-
the
Yeah,
buffer
Michael,
zone.
I can help. I can help
planting.
with this one too, Michael.
Okay.
Hey.
So Courtney, Kurt, and Terry. It's not a quorum, and you can just sort of draft some stuff and have something for the next meeting. On this stuff here, I'll give you this file, and you can. I mean, the main thing I'll clean this up based on today, but this is the biggest area. You can obviously comment on anything else, but this part of it here is the main one that needs some work on the vegetation plan. Okay.
Okay,
Then-
one more thing.
Yeah.
I personally would like to have a better handle on the what the wetland regulations say and what they mean, and what the flood level and all that mean. I don't really feel like I understand that well enough to.
The question is, well, you can go read them. It's interesting reading to see how they define it all. And as I sent you a document about the preambles for each of the resources, that gives you a little summary of part of why we're doing
Okay.
this.
I guess I'm wondering if maybe all the information is not quite in to say this is what the wetland is, and this is what the parameters are, and this is what we have jurisdiction over and what we don't. I guess I don't feel I'm quite there, and it seems like some things have changed since this plan that has written as drawn up there. It seems like it might be a little different.
Yes, I would say this part, the isolated land subject to flooding is changed. And so in theory, the jurisdiction and practice.
Actually, Michael, I don't think it's actually changed. It's just that we've now mapped it for you. We hadn't done that or about to give you a map of it.
Right.
Whereas we had not done that previously, but it hasn't changed.
The wetland line was fixed.
That was fixed
this
a year and a
week,
half or
the
2 years ago. Yeah,
This wetland line was fixed
that's right.
for the vegetated
Okay, I guess I'm not sure if the full, obviously, we're seeing getting a better idea of how much flooding happens on this property. It's also a big enough piece of property that if there are, it could probably be certified, could be certified as a vernal pool. I don't know if that would make any difference either.
What I can tell you is we have all the studies prepared. We caught about 24 fish in the pond, so
Oh, you caught fish in the pond?
a couple of dozen fish. We put a fish trap in there and caught a bunch of fish. So I
Well,
think
that's
I'm
a
not
lot.
I'm not an expert, but I'm told that means it's not one of the things that means it's not a vernal pool.
Yes, if that has fish, then it wouldn't qualify as
Yeah,
at
we
least
have
to the
photographs
name.
of Deshang holding up the fish. It's very funny.
Okay, well, that's
I would love
Get
to
it
see
dinner.
that.
And plus it then also, but certification is something that we can't ins- insist on is part of the
oh,
problem.
we could invite someone to do that, and I think, but it doesn't matter if it's got fish in it. It's not going to be certified as a vernal.
Okay, we'll talk about that whole other issue, but it's not an issue here.
Okay.
Okay, I think it's getting late here. So we will continue this discussion on March 7th. So we can get something out and try our best to do something that is reasonable by the wetlands and maybe be accepted by the ZBA, and see what comments Bob gives from his side to the ZBA about it. And I think that's enough for tonight, everybody, on this topic. Is that okay for everybody? Okay, thank you for all participating. Thank you, Bob. We'll let you know some scheduling stuff on that 7th if you want. And
So just one question, Michael. Washington Street Homes was on the agenda as well. Are you going to pass on that tonight?
I'm gonna pass on everything else tonight.
Okay, I wanted to stay around if you were going to do that. If not, I'm happy to go to bed too.
no, that one is right. We're gonna try to.
That
limit
was just the opening ceremonies.
Oh, the
yes.
other night. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, we were given 10 minutes to present the project.
Yeah, right.
But
But it's nice. It's certainly a nice, some useful changes. I guess I'll speak from the at least the PV side that was done. But yes, we will see if we get to that one so that we're a little bit more ahead of the curve, unlike this Farm Road one.
yeah,
So-
you've obviously got time on that one. So
Yeah, right. So, and we can
Anyway.
work on that, and we can work on some of those issues. Well, this will be a learning experience for us. On how to work with the ZBA on stuff and you.
yeah, I mean, in many ways, it's interesting because that project is a mini version of Coolidge Crossing, which again, you haven't dealt with, but ZBA already dealt with. In that, we're back, that building is about, I don't know, 65 feet off of the wetlands. And as I recall in Coolidge Crossing, there are 3 buildings very similar in scale that are about 55 feet off the wetlands. So it's kind of a similar type of situation as Coolidge Crossing. So it'll be interesting to see how ZBA.
All right, and see
processes
how the work goes on and
Yeah.
obviously that you get the little message that the landscaping and the vegetation plan is of particular importance. We can get a little bit more work on that done as part of this so that it's a little simpler at this
Yeah.
point in the process. But that's something we can do a little more working together on maybe.
Well, great. Well, I will take off then. Thank you, guys. Appreciate
Okay.
your inviting me to be here.
Hey, it's our duty to do that. We were talking about you.
Bye.
Okay, see you. Okay, I'm going to reopen the hearing on the draft regulations because I'm going to torture all of us to go through definitions, but no, I'm just kidding. Unless people feel like they want to go address a few things that are simpler.
And the straw poll says no.
Then I'll say to you, whether people could mark up those 3 files that got sent out and think about it beforehand. So we're not wrestling with it, but Kurt is going to come up with some wonderful wording for one of them.
I already emailed you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's on it. I saw it.
Somebody's getting something done.
Also, I've thought further on the capitalization question. If we're defining terms, those terms need to be capitalized throughout. Otherwise, if it appears uncapitalized, it would not have that definition. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, no,
Yes.
that's the way we view it on when I do my
Okay.
financial work.
Do that.
Yeah.
Okay, so, we have a bit of whatever it is, fixing up of a few things here or there, but I'm gonna keep it out of the, I don't
Yeah, I
want.
mean, something like that I could go through at the end when we're getting close to the end and make sure everything is capitalized properly and all that. You know, I think that's easier to save for the end when things.
Oh,
are
you know,
kind
it's just more a matter of what it looks like, of how, we'll have to figure out how we package this, because we're doing so many changes, small and big, whether we have separate packages for people, so people don't get lost. Like when Jacob cleaned it up a little, because it gets so busy. How are the public gonna really review it more carefully? But we'll
I
figure
mean,
out.
I think we have to do the same thing that the state that Mass DEP does when that DEP
Right.
does when they propose these big changes. They provide a clean version of like a PDF of here's the proposed new version, and then PDF of here's the old version, and then you have the marked up red line version, which is kind of
Right.
unreadable, but at least it tells you where to look.
Right, exactly.
Provide all three of those.
Well, we'll get that done. Okay. In that case, Joyce, what do we have for our next meeting? If you're there, can you hear us? Do you have internet? Are you there?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. I can hear you.
Okay, we have a new notice of intent at the next meeting. We haven't advertised it yet because we have 3 weeks till our next meeting. And that will probably take, I would give it at least a good half hour for discussion.
And we're gonna be
It
able
doesn't
to
have to,
close
it doesn't have to be, it doesn't have to be first. It's a deck. It's a simple project, but they have not provided all the information they need yet.
Okay, so which we could either, right, if they don't do it in time, we could just say we're gonna just continue it because it's not worth. In that sort of sense, we wanna get a complete application. But if they
So
give.
let's not,
all the
I'd like to
information-
not put it on first, I guess is what I'm trying to say, just in case. So we don't so we don't screw up the schedule. So what would you
Right.
like to put on? Did you ask for land management? Do they need time again?
Yeah.
They don't need it. We could do it on our own, but we have that
Well,
discussion.
Kelly, all right, I guess so, but I think Kelly probably wants to be there for any discussion of the DPW stuff,
So we
right?
have land management, we have this farm road homes, and we have the regs. And this NOI, we have 4 things so far. For that thing there, and 2 of which. We have to schedule, and partly. The land management if we want to have Kelly. So if we, I guess we can start, maybe we do the regs first. And that one we could always continue to later if, or keep going depending on how the NOI goes. Do we want to do 7:20 for the regs? And I don't know. 7, okay, so that's the problem of, where we put in Kelly. Cause he likes to do it early or whether.
All right, so let's do Kelly at 7:20.
And give it, I don't know. I guess we can do that inch by inch because there's probably a lot there. What do we want to give it? 20 minutes, 30 minutes?
Oh my God, there's a good dog. There's a good dog. The dog's word, but I know there's a dog there.
Do we do 30 minutes?
Okay, we can always, if we use up okay, we'll do 30 minutes and it's 7:50. Are we gonna have the regs? And then do the NOI at,
So what about, are you gonna do farm, you're gonna invite Bob back for Farm Road? Are you gonna switch Farm Road all the way to the end of the night? Or do you wanna do that at
I guess we have to get that done for sure. So maybe that's a 7:50 roughly.
Okay.
And then Farm Road.
How long, half an hour for that?
Yeah, we had a half an hour for that. Then we have and that's a discussion, so we could always bring in something else. Well, I guess the reg. And then we want to schedule the regs hearing before the other one, just in case the other one turns out to be not.
Yep. Yeah.
workable.
So we give the regs 30 minutes?
If we do 8:15 of, we could always switch to 8:15 for the regs, which we could always let slide, and then do we do 8:30 for the NOI?
Yep.
And that way we have room to either just keep running the regs. And and Farm Road has to be done by 8:30 no matter what, even if we play around with the regs. Okay. I'm sure everybody absorbed that and everybody thinks that's just swell. Okay.
That sounds good.
Okay, so we have 8:30 for the NOI. So I move to continue the reg drafting hearing to 8:15 on March 7th.
Second.
Any further discussion? Good. Roll call vote. Michael, aye. Jacob,
Aye.
Kurt.
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Courtney,
Aye.
Steve,
All right.
Terry.
Hi.
Okay. Is there anything else that we need to talk about tonight?
No.
Okay, 2.5 hours is actually not bad for the meetings we used to have. Which go even longer, but okay. So, I guess we're done.
Move to adjourn.
And just think about between now and then is the conference, if anybody does it, let others know. I second the move to adjourn at 9:47. Any further discussion? All right, I haven't stopped sharing the screen for everybody. Oh God, sorry about that.
I just want to see animals.
Okay. Okay, there we go. Roll call vote. Michael, aye. Where's the dog voting? You're on Buzz, you're on Blur.
Here we go. Oh, I can turn that off.
Yeah,
Maybe.
come on.
maybe I can.
Michael, aye. Steve,
All right.
Kurt,
Aye.
Courtney,
Aye.
Matt.
Aye.
Steve has a little dog, right?
What's that?
Did you
I
vote?
said Steve
Jacob?
has a little dog. Jacob has a big dog. Yeah, yay!
Jacob voting?
Yeah. Aye.
Terry?
Hi.
Okay, meeting is adjourned.